All right, everyone. Hello. This is Reilly Wooten and Jennifer Wiggins in ADED 7640 for this fall 2021 with Dr. Cordy. Today, we are here to talk to y'all a little bit about remote work and technology. This is something that has become very prominent in the past year or so, especially with the pandemic that we are currently still experiencing. We're still getting a little bit of the backlash kind of things from that. So we wanted to make sure we could hit on these points and have y'all learn a little bit more about remote work and technology. So today our objective is that by the end of this presentation, participants will be able to better understand the importance and relevance on how the integration of technology into the workforce affects our daily lives and how the COVID-19 pandemic has transformed learning. And a few key points and topics that we are going to cover is I will speak a little bit about the history of technology in the workforce, and Jennifer is going to talk to y'all about how technology has grown in the workforce and the rise of technology in the workforce during the COVID-19 pandemic.
But the first exercise we're going to do is a little self-reflection, and this will be our first activity. We know you're either sitting at home or your office or maybe even your easy chair, so you can do a mental note or you can jot this down on paper if you like. Questions for you today are, have you ever worked remotely? If so, did you work remotely before COVID-19 or as a result of the lockdown? And if you didn't work remotely, imagine an occupation where you did and create a scenario on how you would plan your day. We'll take a moment to let you think through that. Okay, Reilly, let's go to the next slide.
All right, thank you. So now that y'all have reflected a little bit, I am going to kind of kick off the rest of the presentation by talking a little bit about the history of technology. So as you know, technology is not just what we use on a daily basis today, like computers, laptops, tablets, phones. It can be traced all the way back to ancient periods, hundreds, thousands of years ago. And this still kind of applies to today too. Things like tools, machines, boats, those are some kinds of things that have always been used and can still be considered a form of technology. So as it applies to the history of technology in the workforce, the first computer that was made for office use is this computer right here, the IBM 610 Auto Point computer. It was made for individual office use, and it was manufactured between the years 1948 and 1954. This is obviously not the most practical solution, and it doesn't even really look like any type of computer that we would use today, but it is the very start of how computers were used for the office, for a workplace. So it is very interesting to look back and see how things have grown throughout the years. So a little bit more about the history of computers, since that is so integral in how much we use them today in the office. The first desktop computer was made in 1981, and you can see it in that top photo right there, the IBM personal computer. And then we have the Mac personal computer, which many of us use Macs today, and that was made in 1984. And if you have a Mac of your own, or if you've ever seen one, you know that there is a big difference between how they look in 1984 with the very first one and how they look today, because today it's a very sleek, small, thin design. And this is definitely not anything that you would see around today. So they have evolved a lot throughout the years. So a short little definition of technology is that it is the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes, especially in industry. So within industry, they use what is called technology road mapping, and it has been around for many, many years. And it is both strategic as well as considered long-term planning. And what this is for technology road mapping, companies will use it so that they can kind of get a plan together of what kinds of technology they will be using. That can kind of trace back to what we talked about with the tools and machines, because it is used by companies such as like NASA, but then we also have companies such as Motorola who can use this, and that's kind of for phones and things like that. So it's all kinds of technology wrapped into one. But the modern and digital technology that we use more on a daily basis in today's day and age can date back to the 1970s for its first use in the what we can consider the modern workplace, which is kind of how we do things today. So I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer in a second after we watch this short video about technology in the workplace. Okay, so that was just a cute little video that we wanted to show y'all about technology and how it's used in the workplace. And now I am going to pass it over to Jennifer.
Hello. Now we're going to roll into what online learning and remote learning is all about. Most of the time, these two terms are pretty much thought of the same thing, thought as the same thing juxtaposed together, but they actually can be slightly different. During this pandemic, it's been pretty obvious that I'm borrowing this quote, this is the online facilitation expertise and experience of adult educators has become an in-demand skill. So those of us that are actually in this class and anyone who's actually uses, does online classes or teaches or even does an online workplace development workshop can understand how important this is. This is an unprecedented time where actually the adult educators is basically, they've tapped into our knowledge, and this is a good time for us to really shine. So adult online learning has actually been around for right around 25 years, especially since the internet became main place and used by just about everyone, starting with an email and whatnot. And as technology progressed, more platforms became available and therefore more avenues for communication. It is also used for professional training and development workshops. And online and remote learning has also been used in the workplace, especially during the pandemic. The many jobs in many sectors, which are high skill service jobs, many of those went to remote, where people worked out of their homes, mainly because of the lockdown. Many of them were there before, but a lot of people are able to do their jobs on their laptops from home and not always have to commute to the office, or maybe only commute part-time. Remote learning is slightly different, but it's also part of online learning. The online learning community, or OLC, are networks of social relationships in which engagement and interaction are critical factors. And the information and communication technologies, these are the things we use: laptops, tablets, smartphones, whether it's iPhones, Samsung Galaxies, whatever you use for communication, all of that is lumped together. This can be used both off campus, whether you're at work campus or school campus. And last but not least, not everything has to be tethered to a computer. So remote learning still can take place off the grid, not connected to a computer or a smartphone or tablet. But you could probably take something like a GoPro camera, which has a memory card in it. You can go on an off-road adventure and then bring that home and upload your adventures to a YouTube channel or Instagram and share that with your family and friends, or as a teaching tool. Next slide. Another avenue of work-life balance is work-life balance for home workers. You have your own home office, the comfort of your own office chair that you chose yourself. You could do meetings via Zoom. You could have, unless you actually need to have a professional face, a lot of people went very casual at home and only dressed up for Zoom meetings when they absolutely had to. Another plus is no commuting. If you commute an hour to work like I do, during the pandemic shutdown, I usually worked 3 days and stayed home 2 days. Those 2 days were wonderful for me when I was able to do some stuff after work and not miss it because I wasn't traveling. So a lot of people do enjoy that because it allows for more family time activities. You clock out or whatever, or your salary, and the sun's still shining outside and you can enjoy time with your family. Next slide. And here we have the next section for pause and reflect. So COVID-19 and remote work access learning. Okay, I'm going to stop for a moment. Do you remember where you were when you found out you had to work remotely? And what steps did you take to prepare? How did that make you feel? Did you enjoy working at home, or did you miss the office atmosphere? And those participants who do not work remotely can create their own scenario. I'll share mine. I tapped into it a moment ago. I worked from the office an average of 3 days a week and stayed home for 2. I personally liked the split. I didn't like being home 5 days a week, so I enjoyed going to the office a couple of days for a change of pace. When we all started working, we wasn't sure what was going to happen. When we were packing up our folders and boxes and getting trained on our laptops, we didn't know if we was going to be home for a week or 3 months. So And then we get the email, oh, you can work from the office a couple of days a week and choose days. So that was a good thing. So those are some ideas as if you think through them, and we'll pause for a moment and let you write your notes down. Next slide. Along with the COVID-19, we basically many school systems and colleges and universities, both private and public, got launched into emergency academic remote learning. Many tools were already in place, especially for faculty and administration who already did teach classes online. But the COVID-19 brought a whole new slew of interesting problems. Yes, we had our tools set up, we had our lessons plans set up, but how are we going to navigate this? The picture that you see is of a labyrinth or maze. And if you look real closely, you can actually see water, not concrete. So the COVID-19 launch into remote learning had to be totally revamped based on what we knew, or the tools we already had, what we already knew. It was also uncharted waters. Next slide. Remote learning is actually not a new concept. Natural disasters can disrupt learning for regular brick and mortar schools, such as earthquakes and tsunamis. Remember the one in Japan a few years ago where the earthquake caused a tsunami, which also caused the nuclear disaster over there that lasted a long time and clean up. Then you have hurricanes like Katrina back in 2005, I believe, and schools were shut down there because of flooding, and remote learning took place on a short term. But eventually they got back to learning in brick and mortar. Of course, there's tornadoes that can destroy property, and also winter storms, whether it be snowstorms, ice storms, that can shut down entire cities. As we know, we've all experienced that at one point or another. And we also have communicable diseases and quarantines. Back in history, we had yellow fever and smallpox, 19th century and earlier, thereabouts. It's the Spanish flu from 1918 and 1919, which came in two waves that completely disrupted the world. In addition to, we already had World War I raging. The polio scares, more than one, but I'm mainly referring to the 1950s one, where pretty much everyone quit swimming in swimming pools and all of the things that happened there, and everybody was scared. And of course, we've had many others, avian flu, whatever, but we're moving up to COVID-19, which is 2019 to 2021. And it's still ongoing, but we're hoping things are easing up and things are getting back to normal, but we'll be glad when we get that behind us. Next slide. And we have remote instruction challenges. These two are together, going across from faculty to students. You have faculty was very adamant about showing their students support, whether they use email, phone calls, messaging to help resolve issues and answer questions. On the student side, you have internet access issues such as sharing devices, multiple people in the home taking turns online, etc. We're going to assume that most of those homes have Wi-Fi, but in other homes that they may have not had such good Wi-Fi service or spotty, or some maybe even use data instead of Wi-Fi for their learning their lessons at home, especially thrown into it so quickly, it would make it difficult. Faculty many of them changed their grading system from A to F to pass fail because they had to change up their curriculum and what assignments they gave students. On the student side, you had limited access or lack of library resources. Yes, we can also go online, especially on the college or the university side, but for K through 12, they may not be able to access their media center, and many of the public libraries were closed. So they were not able to access materials as readily there. On back to the faculty, remove or rearrange assignments so students can complete them easier learning remotely. Students needed emotional support from family and peers for help and basically guidance and or just an ear. And back to faculty, changing teaching formats and how they engage, first face-to-face versus how they engage via Zoom or whatever to deliver their lectures. And students not being able to communicate regularly with teachers or professors, such as delayed responses, because the teachers had their hands full too, and they were just going as fast as they can, because they were working from home and they had families as well. Next slide.
Okay, so now I'm going to take over and just kind of get y'all to pause and reflect one more time on what you've learned. And maybe on that note or sheet of paper that you've been using, kind of jot down where you think we should go from here. In my opinion, I think that COVID-19 is still slightly affecting the workplace, but as from a technology standpoint, I think technology is ever changing and growing constantly. And we've learned a lot in the past year and a half and how we can use technology in the workplace and work more remotely and not have to go to the office if it is not allowed. So we do have a survey that we are going to post the link for y'all. And we would just like to hear a little bit of feedback about your thoughts on our presentation about technology in the workplace. And we have our contact information here. Jennifer has her email provided, and that's mine right there below. And we just want to say a big thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation and learn a little bit more about remote work and then technology and how it's used in the workforce. And we are going to show our references before we say goodbye. So thank you so much. And we really appreciate y'all taking the time to listen to our presentation today.